Today is March 10th, 2010, commemoration day of Tibetan Uprising Day. Now 51 years ago, the Tibetan people rose up and were crushed like that. And over not too long a time, many died. There's still a world tragedy, And the virus, the same virus that passed through Tibet, arose in other places, arose in Iran, Iraq, other troubled places, Herzegovina, Chechnya, the Hutus in Africa, and places that are experiencing oppression and disaster, cultural disaster that we never even hear about. That I especially pray for those who are suffering from oppression without respite, and no one knows. No one knows. We understand that that people in there are many tribes in the Amazon and the Brazilian rainforest who are silently undergoing great oppression by companies who come in only for money, and their cultures are destroyed in a number of different ways. So that even though Tibet is still not free, what a marvelous blessing that nearly everyone who has any kind of education in this whole world knows the tragedy of Tibet. Isn't that so? And for that we're grateful, and that has been accomplished in perhaps only the past 20 or 30 years. And we also wish His Holiness the Dalai Lama a very long life, so that his efforts on behalf of the Tibetan people will go on unimpeded, that his every wish be accomplished. Not just Tibetan freedom, but His Holiness has a big plan for peace, and his many peace projects, institutes that he has created. I understand he's going to be here not too long in May. There's some mind science that he's not a member of that, but he's coming for the inauguration, and I believe that he was instrumental in having this mind science foundation, something I am terribly interested in. But guess who didn't get an invitation? Oh, well, we'll be on retreat that weekend. It does coincide with our retreats, which, of course, have to be planned a year in advance. And so we are not canceling. And anybody here have an invitation to the... No? Okay, come to retreat then. We'll pray together. I understand His Holiness has a very, very short public talk, which usually they're hard to get tickets and et cetera, et cetera. So better to come on retreat. His Holiness will come again, like that. And we'll be up in De Pere and at a wonderful location, the Padres at what called? St. Norbert Abbey have arranged a place. We've been there on retreat a number of times now. So we are gathered here. This is actually the first activity of our Milwaukee teaching. And where was I just last? Where was I? Huh? I was in California? Okay. I was at Joyful Path this past weekend, and we had 24-hour Mahayana vows. It was wonderful, wasn't it? That I promise you, it's not difficult to get up at. We started at 5 a.m. because you have to take the Mahayana vows before the sun rises, and the way you see, because you don't own a watch like that in the old days, you don't own a watch. And so how do you know that the sun has not arisen yet, is that you cannot see the lines on the palm of your hand. So if you have to ever get up really early in the morning and you happen to be outdoors and available, you check and see. If you can see the lines on the palm of your hand, it is too late, that you should have gotten up earlier. However, was it last summer we did 24-hour Mahayana vows? Or the summer before? People are still chuckling because they didn't calculate that the sun comes up earlier in the summer. Did you know it does? Yes, they didn't. And so we started at 3 a.m. And we were grateful for that opportunity as well. And so we had a pleasant time, and the inauguration of the new rooms at Joyful Path. And who was in there? Who slept in there? You slept in there. Was it comfortable?
It's wonderful.
It was nice and quiet. Very good. And so now you have retreat rooms. Now there are retreat rooms at Joyful Path. So if you cannot stand it anymore, that there is a room with your name on it at Joyful Path, and you can certainly take a retreat weekend, huh? It's true? You can take a retreat weekend, and they're happy to accommodate you in a real monastery, and you will be very happy there. And so this visit, while I'm here in Milwaukee, and in just a couple of minutes, we're going to start talking about the words of my perfect teacher, and I'm going to skip. It's like reading a novel. It's like reading a novel. That you see something where they're taking out the swords and the knives and starting to cut up people, or they're kissing excessively, and you just sort of skip through those parts of the novel. You're not interested. And so I've skipped to the juicy parts, which is the part 2, A Rising Bodhicitta and a Refuge. So in case you wonder where we are in the book and what happened to all of those, all of the discussion on the hell realms, that in fact, maybe someday we'll go back and visit them, but not today. It's too nice a day. And the beautiful fog as we drove down here, so pleasant. It looked like some kind of Japanese painting, didn't it, out there? And so we enjoyed our drive, and listening on NPR about the value of poetry, and in that way, much of the scripture that remains for us to cogitate and to grow and learn and meditate upon is a kind of poetry. It's a kind of poetry, and it's been translated from the Pali, the Buddha's words in Pali, to Sanskrit, to Tibetan, to English, and who knows what the names of future times, what these languages will be called. But right now, we're sitting in the English slice of the poetic exposition of the Buddha's words, huh? And like that, anything that was worth saying in spiritual context or spiritual advice, it was generally, not all, but generally done in verse form. That it was considered good manners, good manners to create verse rather than what they call prose or Prozac. Prose. And in that way, poetry has quite come out of favor. That people find the verses not as easy to work with, and so much of our society has moved away from verse And so when we go back to verse in trying to understand the Buddha's words or the words of the earlier masters, that we also realize that this is a kind of announcement of a special kind of respect. And in that way, the usage the usage of poetry made it a kind of mnemonic. Someday I'm going to be able to say that. You know what I'm talking about. Easy to remember. Easy to remember. And what was easy to remember endured. Isn't that so? And so these verses are put to memory, and we recite them over and over again until they are actually written on our hearts. And like that, although these are short, and we also had these and also the aphorisms of the great masters. And interestingly enough, the Buddha did not speak in verse. They placed it into some things which appeared like verse, but the Buddha spoke in prose. So either way, but in Tibet, we're very fond of the cleverness of poetry, and so much of it is in poetic form. And we certainly can't fault the great ones such as Milarepa. Not only were they in verse, not only were they spontaneous, but he also sang them. So if Milarepa, which by the way, the movie part 2 I think should be coming out soon, but the original Milarepa not come. And the and what year? Oh, well over 1,000 years, more than 1,000 years ago. And so Milarepa would be a perfect candidate for very, what would you call it? New wave performance artist. He would be hard pressed not to turn down gigs in Las Vegas and New York, what you call Greenwich Village, and his poetry. He would be better than Bob Dylan, better than Bob Dylan, like that. Unfortunately, we have no recordings if he have a good voice, but that had to be better than Bob Dylan too. So I don't even know about a Bob Dylan, but I heard him sing once, and it hurt my ears so much I had to stop. And although I understand as a poet that people really love him. So anyway, part 2 of Words of My Perfect Teacher, chapter 1. Taking refuge, the foundation stone of all paths. Oh, by the way, for those of you who are not familiar, this is called, this form of book, here's the cover. This is by Patru Rinpoche, but the form is what is called Lam Rim, which is Stages of the Path. Now, if we go to a bookstore and we look at many different kinds of books, that are commentaries on different kinds of, hello dear, come in, commentaries on different things that the Buddha said, or some of the later great teachers said, that we will, no, I said hello to George and now my mind is gone. George, do you have my mind with you? Did you take it back to the back row there? What was I saying?
Types of books in a bookstore. If you went into a bookstore.
Oh yes, that you can open up a book here and you read the Buddha said this, and then you open up another book and you say the Buddha said that, and then you open this book and you see that the Buddha said this. You say, well, this is impossible because these three things are opposed to each other, and many more teachings where the Buddha seemed to say one thing and then he said exactly the opposite. And so how do we understand exactly what we are supposed to do, which which advice do we follow first? And Great Atisha wrote the first Lamrim. It's called Lamp on the Path. So if you want to make a note of that, it's still available. This is like the year 1000. It's still available in bookstores, many translations, Atisha, Lamp on the Path. And this is a small book, and naturally as things go on, you get big books out of small books. It doesn't work the other way. It should work the other way around, but it doesn't. And so many teachers have taken the format of Lamrim, which means that you have to learn first things first. You have to learn first things first. And step by step, stages of the path, that we come to a flowering of our own understanding. And in our geluk, that we see Refuge as being one of the earliest teachings. And so part two is now we're talking about, after understanding about the cosmology and various other aspects, leisure, endowments, eight worldly thoughts, etc., many different basic teachings, that we now come to the part which is really interesting, which is, how do I develop compassion? How shall I develop compassion? And how will I come alive in a new way? And generally the teachings of the primary teachings, or the first teachings or introductory teachings of Buddhism, are very self-directed. That means that you understand the nature of your own suffering. You need to understand about the workings of karma to the best of our ability within the existential problem that we have. And you are learning about how can you rearrange your life so that you can have the best kind of situation to develop a spiritual life. And so all along the way, we make personal decisions. We say, I'm not going to be like this anymore. I'm not going to be so angry. I'm not going to waste my life. And you peel away what is useless. And then you begin to reconstruct yourself. Isn't that so? In a way, it's a kind of, well, I've heard like this, a rebirthing, which actually sounds a little disgusting to me. But maybe it is kind of like being reborn. Although there's a lot of areas about people who are reborn that, anyway, let's not go there. It is a kind of rebirth. And now you stand basically devoid of a lot of the attitudes which you had. And you say, now where do I go from here? And like this, I saw a movie once where someone was going into what they call a clean room. Huh? And they took a big brushes and they scrubbed the person, and they had to, under the fingernails and any place that any dirt might have hidden, scrub them raw. Huh? And then they put on this white suit with a mask. And then they were able to go into this very sterile room. So there's something about the extraordinary, if we want to look at it this way, about the extraordinary state of transformation, a new way of being, in a way that you're completely clean. I'm using an ordinary analogy, but I think you get my point. That completely cleansed, that you want to move into a new way of being without carrying any of the germs and viruses and garbage that you've been dragging along from lifetime to lifetime. Isn't that so? And so big scrubbing in the earlier parts of the Lamrim. And now we get to the part where we say, these are the qualities which I want to develop, okay? And so like being in a clean room, that we feel a little bit more empty, that maybe we feel a little bit lonely, huh? Because at this point, we don't know who we are anymore. We used to think, oh, I know who I am. I'm who my father told me I was. Now I got it. And then about age, 12, 15? Huh? That you realize you aren't who your father said you were. And that's when the problems start. Huh? And so we learn who we're not gradually, and according to having rejected who our parents think we are, many people, not everyone, but many people, that we decide that we are who our friends tell us we are, huh? And that can fall away, can't it? And you realize that you have qualities and you have things to do, places to go and things to see that don't have anything to do with drinking beer. Hard to believe. For those of you who are college age here, hard to believe. But this gradual disappointment in hearing people tell us who we are and not really having a chance to have good input. And so the path of purification or learning about the existential dilemma that we have, in the Four Noble Truths, dependent arising, some wonderful ideas. Give us some ideas, not so much who we are, but who we aren't. And arriving at the stage where the door opens up, and this says part 2, chapter 1, taking refuge, the foundation stone of all paths. This Patru Rinpoche, who was quite an iconoclastic fellow, one of the early medium Tibetan. No. Actually, he's a youngster. He was only about 100 years ago. Patru Rinpoche said, and this actually he's saying the same thing that all of the teachers say in many different ways, and he says as the opening, like a symphony, they go brrr, with the big drums, huh? And then the music, everyone picks up their violin and piccolo and they begin to sing. And so this is the da 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 on the big bass drum. And he says, crowned with the 3 jewels of the outer refuge, you have truly realized the 3 roots, the inner refuge. You have made manifest the 3 kayas, the ultimate refuge. Peerless teacher, at your feet I bow. And like all fine commentaries, that the essence of what is going to be explained in the entire book is distilled into a single verse or a few verses which give the reader an idea, what is this about? It's sort of what they call, what do they call those? I've seen pictures of those yellow books when you don't have time to read the whole book.
Cliff notes?
Cliff notes. It's the cliff notes of Tibetan Buddhism. There you go. And so, taking refuge, the foundation stone of all paths, is explained under 3 headings. Now he's going to divide it. Approaches to taking refuge, how to take refuge, and the precepts and benefits of taking refuge. You know, before I begin, I may have one or two things to share with you about refuge. That refuge is not very well understood outside of perhaps the old days Oriental culture. Maybe even modern Oriental culture is not the same. But the refuge in the Oriental culture smacks right up against the Western concept of the supremacy of individuality. Isn't that so? And so we have an issue even before we begin, and I think it's easier to talk about that rather than telling you how wonderful Refuge is, as though I was trying to sell you a used car, that I think it would be better to talk about the problems that we suffer from in individuality. You know, I have seen, been occasionally in stores where people have brought tiny babies in a stroller, maybe 4, 5, 6 months old. And this not happen in the Orient, but in Western culture, that children, even only a few months old, are expected to start learning how to make choices. Huh? Have you ever seen people who have taken, for example, take 2 teddy bears, and you say, which one do you like? You like this one or you like this one? You want a red one or do you want a blue one? Which one would make you more happy? And you show this one and show that one. And the child has to choose. The child has to make a choice. Now, in one way, this is very much in keeping with your culture. That is a kind of respect that you think it's a kind of respect that you show to a child or to an adult or to anyone by giving them choices, all right? However, the problem is that before a certain age, we believe that children are confused by too many choices, huh? What do you think? Throw tomatoes at me? That children, that making choices too early or too many choices creates a conflict which actually does not exist. And so children become too stimulated, and they begin to associate a separation by the capacity to make choices. They experience a separation from family at too early an age because they will continue to make choices upon choices, and the sign of the completion of that is when they no longer wish to have anything to do with their families, because their choices always take them into separation. In other words, choices that you make, and I'm talking about more as children or in the growing process, that the choices that you make as a child mean that you have more differences with other people's choices than you do similarities. Isn't that so? This is not easy to explain. In the Orient, we never ask children to make choices. That they are expected to feel safe. That the primary interaction between someone who cares for children and the child is to make them feel as safe as possible. And that means not making them separate from parents who are the one who makes them feel safe. Huh? Okay, now, only in very recent history has this individuality become a prime factor in culture. You agree, or what do you think? Who has something to say about this subject? Yes.
True. When I was raised, my parents, they didn't raise me this way, but they told me how their grandparents used to say, children are to be seen and not heard. It wasn't that many generations ago, children were to be seen and not heard, and it wasn't until you were an adult and they thought you had something interesting and educated to say that they wanted to hear from you. And children were much better behaved.
Much better behaved.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Who else? I don't expect you to agree with me. If you have something, the way we grow and the way we learn about other concepts isn't that now I'm telling you what's right. Is that I want to hear your opinion, and I think it's important for us to share how we feel, and like that. I'm interested in what you have to say. You don't have to say what I'm saying. George, at the back.
I think there are many, many, many walking wounded emotionally people in this country because of parental expectations that were placed on children at a way too early age, without enough knowledge of the energy of love and what that is also needed in that kind of nurturing when they're being raised. And I think maybe in the Oriental, they probably give that affection and care a lot more willingly or openly than what they give over here, Westernly.
What I've observed, but Uma, what would you like to say? Yes, dear.
Well, my mom has passed away, and the last conversation I had with her was an order.
She gave you an order.
Yeah, right before she passed away.
Oh, my.
That was Friday. My Tuesday on that week she passed away.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But that was her last order she gave me.
Oh, my. How old was your mother, dear?
94.
94. All right.
Yeah, well, that was my last order I got from my mother.
All right.
It comes out in my spring break.
Who else would like to share regarding, yes?
Well, it does seem a natural tendency as a mother to a young child that you do share everything with them, and you even chew your food and then give it to them. And so there's not those, you're nurturing and they're not having to make choices. They just take whatever
That's right.
is offered. And that seems to be a very close bonding thing at the time, So I can see that could be extended.
Yes. And so your society, does anyone else have something they want to share? Yes.
I think this is a very interesting point, Rinpoche. Oftentimes, adults, parents, give up their right to direct children.
Yes.
It creates a lot of insecurity.
Yes, exactly.
Children sometimes need to be children and not be pushed beyond where their
Yes.
growth rate is.
And so we have had, yes, dear. Yeah, I know you have something to say.
Well, there's so many things that come to mind as I work in this.
Oh, good.
area, but, you wouldn't give a choice to an infant or a 6-month-old because they wouldn't even understand the choice. They might like this teddy bear right now, but 2 seconds later they want that one.
Yes.
And so, but a 3-year-old could have a choice of what color socks they would wear. But the parent would give them the choice and then set up that choice. So I don't know that it's choice so much that I am concerned about as I watch parents and children, but that children are so much on their own without guidance.
That's right.
In care with others and watching television
Yes.
too much, and so many societal challenges, and it just gets increasingly more difficult as they age, that I think parents don't just spend sweet time listening and being and eating together and guiding.
But if we begin, even at the 3-year-old stage, that children have too many clothes, they have too many shoes, they have too many little sweaters, they have too many little coats, they have too many little toys, they have too much, they've got too many electronics, they have too many telephones. I mean, even 3 and 5-year-olds have cell phones now. And children have that. This all brings in a culture that is based upon their personal awakening, personal desires in small beings who actually are not built for that. They're built for running around and exploring their physical world. They're built for going out and running and rolling in the snow and rolling in fields of flowers. They are not built for the mental task of the beginnings of separation from safety. That this pushing, literally giving these choices, pushes the children by saying, well, this is the one that I would choose, but which one do you choose? Means that you and me are not like each other anymore. And the next step is, how can the child trust when they don't feel a part of mother or father or family anymore? They feel unsafe. And so we learn to put up certain kinds of walls and barriers between ourselves and others, which is the natural outcome of making choices. That my choices are different from your choices, and that's what makes me an individual. And individuality is what makes us the most valuable in this society. We have sterling examples of early pioneers, of early business people, especially early business people, who made choices that actually were not that nice, but they were successful because they were their choices as opposed to the choices of others. And in this way, the society rewards those people with high levels of individuality. True? True. Not in the Orient. Not in the Orient. And so, this sense, this works for a while. I'm not saying that individuality is wrong. But when you stress any system, that you find out where are the weak points. In a perfect world, it doesn't matter. Everybody happy, only butterflies and buttercups and butter. And nothing is a problem as long as everything's going well. But perhaps someone marries and their partner doesn't love them anymore. Their partner chooses and has a perfect right to choose to go away. And so their choices have a direct impact on you, but it doesn't matter because you're not as important as their choices. True? That Loyalty, gone. Loyalty is gone. Because choices are easier than dealing with people. Choices are easier. They're saying, I won't tolerate this anymore. I'm going to just blow this up and go do something else because I am free to do it. In the Orient, this is not so. That it is a huge step to leave the safety of family. And it is so very rare in Western culture that if you say you have a close family relationship and that you feel safe, people look at you like, well, why don't you write a book? Huh? On the other hand, they feel sorry for you because they say, oh, you must have missed something, that you don't have a very good cultivated sense of individuality. This a close-knit family must have been suffocating for you. Huh? And so, although anything can become dysfunctional, that a structure, and most important, my main point here, is the loss of feeling safe changes something in your perceptions. And you feel that you need to put up barriers and exist behind this imaginary barriers. You need to keep people on the outside of your boundaries. You need to have structure so that people don't touch you. Because your natural and organic safety mechanism has been eroded or never really grew properly. Okay? This is the environment in which Buddhism has come to tell you how marvelous refuge is. But you still are fully embroiled in trust issues, quote unquote. It's hard for you to get close to people. It's hard for you to feel connected with people. Because those muscles of safety and trust never got developed correctly. And so here you are. I'm not saying all of you here, but there must be some of you here, or at least one person here, who has problems in this area. And in that way, you may be in a crowd of people, some people, in a crowd of people feel lonely. How could you feel lonely surrounded by people? It's because you can't touch them, because you can't trust them, because you don't feel safe around them. You don't feel safe with others. And the more you not feel safe, the more you nurture your trust issues, the worse it gets. It never will heal trust issues by mistrusting. Never, never, never. Unfortunately, for people who suffer this way, it's the only tool they have in their toolbox. They bring this big box of skills and they open it up. There's only one tool in it. Mistrust. Compassion? No, there is no compassion. There's only mistrust. And so we begin learning about chapter 1. Before we begin learning about chapter 1, we have to really think about what is it that keeps us from understanding this enlightenment. You think, oh, this doesn't have anything, my loneliness doesn't have anything to do with enlightenment. I should just read more about it and understand it a bit better, and it must be some kind of a mental gymnastic thing or thingy. That's a better description. And I'll just, like that. I'll keep shifting around my attitudes until I hit upon something where the big light goes off, and then I'm enlightened, and that's it. But it doesn't work that way. That we find that we have to cultivate. We have to cultivate new attitudes, but we can't. Because in the very place that this new attitude needs to sit on this lovely seat, this lovely chair, mistrust is sitting like a squatter. Huh? And so we have to eject the squatter. And here is where the maturity, because it's already too late for you to go back and be a baby and say, please, please, mommy, don't give me so many choices, you're confusing me. Just give me a toy. I'm happy to play with any toy. Give me a rock. Give me a Kleenex box, anything like that. Don't give me so many choices, but it's too late. You've already been damaged in one way or another. And so our only choice at this point is to say, I'm not going to be like that anymore. I'm not going to be like that anymore. Why? Because I don't approve of that. I don't approve of that. And I won't tolerate it in myself. I can't wear this. It hurts. It's a filter which I have worn. And not only worn, but it keeps growing. I won't do that to myself. I'm too nice a person. I'm too valuable. Why? Because I'm going to become enlightened. That means I'm valuable. Even that idea, I want to become enlightened, makes me valuable. And so we think, would I do that to a valuable person? No, I would not. I have too much self-respect to behave like that. I won't do that anymore. And this is when your own mind becomes the guru. When you won't tolerate your own bad behavior. And at the same time, please realize that in this area of trust issues, you're already suffering from feelings of lack of safety. So do we get the horsewhip out? No. We treat ourselves as though we are a bit, as George said, walking wounded regarding needing feelings of safety. And this is where, after thinking about it that way, this is where we now begin to think about, where do I find that sense of safety? How can I acquire the safety that I didn't get as a baby or as a child? This doesn't mean your parents were bad. Your parents were great. But where can I discover in my maturity, what can I do for this poor suffering one here to make myself feel safe enough to be able to trust again? Well, maybe mommy and daddy are gone now. Maybe there's no one there, or they're in need too. Now you become. Parents are old, and you become the parent, and it's too late. Now they want to feel safe. And so this responsibility falls upon ourselves to make ourselves feel safe. And now this is the next question. How do we make ourselves feel safe? that spontaneously you have come up, or some of you have come up, with this idea, I'll just go and hide. I'll tell people, I'll make faces so they stay away from me. I'll demonstrate to them that I'm dangerous and don't come near me because I'm dangerous, right? And then people don't come around, then you feel lonely. and so the many strategies that we use, so far, maybe some have worked, I don't know. I'd be happy to hear about them. But very often we use, is it for me?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Very often, the strategies that we use create the strategies that we, what was I saying? How to make ourselves feel safe.
Very often the strategies that we use are
What? You're doing fine. What am I going to say next? Huh?
very often people hide.
The what?
Some people hide.
That we hide. But what happens then is our energy begins to stagnate. Because the free-flowing energy that we need to have in our interactions with others and our interactions with the world and our interactions with ourselves has become stagnated, and we begin to close down. It may be physical, it may be clenching our energy. We may have, mental difficulties that it can manifest in many different ways, but these are all poor strategies to be able to overcome and to make ourselves feel safe. Yes, Tikshan.
Apparently there is a technical difficulty on the call, because Renda tried to call me, but my thing is on silent.
And what should I do?
It's a good question, I don't know. I'll let Gil know. I thought it was on vibrate, but I guess it's not.
A technology moment.
It's a new phone, I'm still learning how to use it.
Oh, that must have been, must have been calling you.
I don't know, I didn't recognize the number. Perhaps.
Okay.
No, it's George. We're working on it, we realize there's a problem. It's okay.
So, who have a question while we're waiting for technology to catch up with us? Huh? Or something you want to say? Yes.
When you were actually you started it last summer.
Whenever I what?
You started last summer, but when you were in California, you gave this, totally amazing exposition of one of the difficulties in the psychology of Western, the way we look at things. It was totally mind-blowing, and I was thinking, how did you figure it out?
It's okay.
And somehow, I'm sitting here thinking, I've never heard this out of you, other than lately on Facebook. How did you figure it out?
What am I talking about tonight? Oh, good. All right, I don't know.
No, it's Neva calling.
You're popular. Okay, testing 1, 2, 3.
Everyone's trying to tell me there's something wrong.
Okay, I hope you can hear now. So, this problem with safety creates a vast amount of activity in the helping professions that the
We're going to check on. Just check.
vast amount of activity in the helping professions. So we've looked at loneliness, as well as wariness, among others, lack of trust, lack of safety. I am saying all of this can be found in the root where our natural safety, which should have been strongly in place until at least the teenage years. At least the teenage years. That the child should be experiencing attention that is so strong and they are so safe that they are just like mommy. They are just like daddy. That their personality, that their attitudes, that their, I'm not going to say their attitudes, but their sense of who they are, belongs to the family and to that care. And they feel completely comfortable, and only when other physiological effects, what they call a puberty, begins to manifest, those are the signals, those are the actual organic signals of a sense of individuality. Huh? Yes.
Ricochet, what happens when there are difficult situations when children are very young? For instance, in my family, there was a lot of manipulation that happened very young, and from parts of my family. And my mother in particular taught a sense of being able to discriminate very early on as an antidote for that. Does that just get... Is that a special situation that's different in the West than...
Oh my, yes.
Or,
You know, you're not the first generation that this was perpetrated on. That for a number of generations in the West, that this sense of individuality has become the prime factor associating with growing up. That it is also a prime factor in a serious issue which they call sexualization of children. Isn't that so? Where you see the little girls dressed up like little queens and competing with each other in beauty contests at age 3 and 4, and dressing up children with the makeup and allowing them to look and to behave so much older really is not so helpful for them as an adult. It may be awfully cute. It may be fun for the child to be the center of attention. They don't need that much individuality. Yes.
so it seems like there is more to the equation than just the choices that are being given children, but also just the environment that the children have growing up.
Absolutely, absolutely, and loss of safety is the point that we're trying to make. I am not criticizing the entire method by which American children or Western or non-Asian children are being raised. And I'm sure there's plenty of Asian children that we could criticize the way they're raised. But in any case, we are looking for the extraordinary health. And so these things must be repaired in order to achieve the recreation of transformation of enlightenment. And so how marvelous that even if you don't have safety in your growing up, that you can still find safety by performing excuse me, I don't mean performing, by embracing the safety of refuge. Embracing the safety of refuge. Now, how it is presented in the in the Orient is based upon this system of safety which is already there, and we only need to say, you think that your safety lies in this relationship that you have where you feel so safe with your family, but there is a higher levels of safety which you will need. And so, as your mother and father protected you from dogs or starvation or bad people, that you knew that you could always run. I sometimes see children that they run to their mother and they take mother's skirt and put it right over their head, and mother's like this, like, what you doing, what you doing? Huh? And the child is grabbing onto their leg. But this sense of safety, that you knew that you could count on your mother or your father, that we want to have that because we have a bigger problem than dogs, scary dogs barking, or a loud noise that might cause us to run to the safety of family. That this entire problem of suffering that has been opened up in the earlier parts of Lam Rim, that says you've got a big problem here because you're not going to be with your family. There are people in this room who have dear ones who have passed away not even that long ago, or family and friends who are very ill. And so we begin to experience a tug of our safety when we think about the mortality of others. And the next step is, where will I be if they're gone? Who's going to keep me safe then? And from the larger sphere, that we realize that there are bigger issues, such as the possibility that we ourselves might pass away. And then where is our mommy and where is our daddy? Huh? That we going to have to go alone. And if we haven't been as careful as we hoped we were, we may not have this opportunity to arrive in the care of such wonderful mommies and daddies as we had in this life. Or if we're not happy with the way they treated us, maybe things will be just as bad as it was this time. Either way, there has to be a new sense of a reliance and refuge that we feel is not going to abandon us, that is going to be a perfect refuge, that is going to be with us beyond the parameters of this fragile life. And so we look at refuge in the correct way. The first level of refuge is fear. The first level of refuge is fear. That almost every Western person says, oh, this is not very sophisticated at all. I understand that refuge from compassion is the highest, and therefore I use compassion refuge exclusively. I bet they shop at Saks Fifth Avenue, too. This is not their problem. The problem is that they have a damaged safety. They have a damaged feelings of safety. And they need to have something other than themselves, which is the problem with the individuality, something other than themselves that they can really depend upon. That we depended upon mommy and daddy. But where are they? Where are they? Or conversely, let's say that you are the mommy and daddy, and you trying to still protect your children the best you can while they are fully embroiled in this safety this safety individuality crunch. It's a sort of what they call a no-win situation. Because you can't talk to them like, here, let me hug you, I'll feel safe here. When you feel better, then like that. Because you have to honor their individuality. And so you suffer as the one who is the protector. You also suffer. Because you see them doing dangerous things. You say, oh, honey, I don't think that's so safe. Good idea. True? And you are caught also. So whichever side you're on, the protector or the one who needs protection, that the system only works in the agreement of your culture and how much you're allowed to touch each other. So we have a certain amount of innate fear, which comes out in anger. If you have problems with anger, then you probably have issues regarding safety and fear and trust. Otherwise, you wouldn't have anger. You would just simply be doing what you're doing to fix things. If you have frustration, you probably don't feel safe enough to be able to explain to others what it is that you feel uncomfortable with, because you don't want to impinge on their individuality. And so you remain in this frustrated state when you could be doing something, but you can't. And so frustration and anger are next door neighbors. Isn't that so? Or at the very least, you feel impatient. You feel impatient because you can't deal with the feelings that you have. You might feel impatient with yourself. Let's say, for example, you wanted to do something, let's say go skiing. I think that'd be crazy, but anyway, you want to go skiing downhill like that. This is a much easier go like that. But let's say you wanted to go downhill skiing. And you think, no, I'm too scared to do that. I want to do it, but I'm too scared to do it. And you're capable of doing it. And so you feel impatient with yourself because you don't feel safe enough. Even though you qualified, you don't feel safe enough. Or standing up, for example, like me, standing up in front of you, being able to talk. Many people would not be able to do that because they don't feel safe enough with themselves. That they feel impatient with themselves because everyone has something wonderful to tell. Isn't that so? But you can't because you don't feel safe enough in your own self to be able to break out of your, what they call an envelope, or your, what they call it?
Glass ceiling.
In your what?
Glass ceiling.
Glass ceiling? To break out of your shell, that's the word. Break out of your shell to be able to do the things that you really feel you're capable of doing. So your own potential is tied to this sense of safety, which is based upon freedom from fear. Now, this broken sense of safety that we want to heal as quickly as possible is not even the main problem. Because the main problem is that we have gathered a tremendous amount of human karma. But we've also confused ourselves. And so we have created many distorted karmas. And like the, what they call, like I see like a rolling table, what they call that, conveyor. a conveyor belt with eggs, just eggs, many eggs going down this conveyor belt. And the people get up and they look. This one's a good, this one no good. And so anything that is damaged, too damaged, any karma that is too damaged to be able to be useful for human birth again will be discarded. Not exactly discarded. You say, this is not an A egg, this is a C egg. There it goes onto that conveyor belt. Now you have A karma, B karma, and C karma. Human realm, animal realm, hell realm. If you damage your karma too much, it becomes twisted and unusable. It's not anything that people doing against you. It's almost a mathematical precision. And so, the fear that we experience with this possibility as thinking people, now we no longer 6-month-old babies, now we have an idea. This a problem that I have needs to be repaired soon. And I need to feel comfortable, and I need to feel safe, and I need to feel as though I belong. I need to feel as though I belong. And so the Buddha says, you may belong to me. You may belong to me to feel safe. To feel safe. And this is the first step. This is the first step of refuge. No, what is the refuge that I use for new people? Oh, here we go. Hold your hands together. Now that we understand a little bit, I give you Buddhist refuge here, and please take it seriously. How do I start? With discrimination. You have to repeat after me. With discrimination. I go for refuge. Seeking freedom. I offer all that I was. Am. And will be. For the result that will not decay. I take responsibility for my actions from now on, and take great joy in joining the family of the Buddha. I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. And now for the second time, repeat after me. With discrimination, I go for refuge. Seeking freedom, I offer all that I was, am, and will be. For the result that will not decay. I take responsibility for my actions from now on, and take great joy in joining the family of the Buddha. I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. And now on a more inner level, I want you to really relax and think carefully, and for the last time. With discrimination, I go for refuge. Seeking freedom, I offer all that I was, am, and will be. For the result that will not decay. I take responsibility for my actions from now on, and take great joy in joining the family of the Buddha. I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. There we go. Thank you. This is a Buddhist refuge. It's done in the English language rather than the Tibetan language, so you understand more. There are many, many deeper meanings of refuge. Tomorrow, no, not tomorrow. Friday, we're going to continue this discussion and talk about other levels of refuge. please think carefully, and please rejoice that to receive Buddhist refuge is a treasure, is a personal storehouse treasure of your mind. Gewa di nyu tu dak lama sangidu pranedro chike malupa ye salago parasho. Thank you. I enjoyed our discussion. I hope you did too. Yes. All right.